Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to let a few more people trickle in, and we'll be starting in the next 2 to 3 minutes. All right, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get kicked off, and today's webinar is how your company can use perks to increase employee retention. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that a recording of this webinar will be sent out within the next day, and we'll also have some time to answer questions at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions via the questions panel in GoToWebinar. My name is Mike, and I work here at Lola.com, the sponsor of this webinar series. Lola is the super simple corporate travel software from the innovators who brought you Kayak. Whether you want better visibility into travel spend, help managing your corporate travel program, or 24/7 human-powered support while you're on the road, Lola.com is the perfect solution. And now it is my pleasure to turn things over to today's host, Sarah Bedrick, co-founder of Compt.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on how to use perks to increase employee retention. So it is after 2 p.m. I don't want to waste any time. Let's dive right in, starting with a few items of housekeeping. First, I'd like to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Bedrick. I'm the co-founder of an HR tech software called Compt. We create software that helps companies to better personalize their employee perks, and my main role there is to research everything I can about employee perks, understand them through and through, and everything there is to know in the market, and then share it with you folks with everyone, just like on today's call. Great, and so if you're sitting here and you're wondering if you're in the right place, this webinar is for people who are chief people officers, if you're the VP or director level of people operations or HR, if you're an executive assistant, office administrator, or a specific function within HR like recruiting or even the CFO. Basically, if your role is to help streamline the company and run more efficiently, you're in the right place. Great, a couple of other items of housekeeping. We're going to be spending about 45 minutes here going through the different items that we have planned. If you have questions, feel free to enter them into that chat window. We'll take the last 10-15 minutes and answer any questions you may have. So if something pops up, feel free to enter it into that chat window. And then also this will be recorded, and we'll be sending out a recording after today. Great. And lastly, what are we going to be talking about here today? First, we'll start off by talking about what's changing with employee perks. We'll then talk about 3 additional strategies that you can implement at your company to retain your employees using perks. We'll go through some additional resources. And then also at the very end, we'll talk about a special offer we have for people who have joined today's webinar. All right, great. So without further ado, let's dive right in and talk about what's changing with employee perks. Now, before we can go forwards, we need to first discuss and come to an agreement on what employee perks are. So for a long time, employee perks have been loosely defined, and in order to move the industry forward together, we first have to come to a common definition. And so for when we talk about employee perks here today, we are talking about ways that organizations can support the needs of employees beyond salary or benefits, and that includes purchasable, programmatic, or environmental perks. So the purchasable perks are the ones that often many of us think of. That includes catered lunches, books, fitness stipends, pet insurance, student loan forgiveness, things that your company is purchasing. There's also programmatic perks, and those are the ones that are usually policy-driven. So things like remote work opportunities, if your office is pet-friendly, or if you have summer Fridays as part of your offering for your employees. And then lastly, environmental perks. And those are ways that you set up your office and the environment to better support your employees. So it could be a meditation room, it could be an on-site gym, it could be a slide. We've probably all heard of the slides in the office before. It's just the overall space. Okay, great. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about perks. And so to understand where we are today with them, we first have to go back. So when perks first emerged on the scene about a decade ago, we like to think of them as things that were nice to have in the office. And that's because employees' expectations for them were really low. We talk about them being those fluffy things now, like the ping pong table, the pool table even, free beer in the office, and snacks here and there. And they were always one of those things that was a bonus for employees. Employees didn't expect them, but they were great to have. And it said a lot about your culture if you were the one who had free beer and casual Fridays. It was a great tactic to get word of mouth for your employer brand and bring people in. And it was also great because it was very inexpensive strategy for companies. There wasn't any formal process around offering free beer in the office, and so whoever was, out picking up beer would grab it. And there was, a real formal process. However, if you fast forward to today, things have changed dramatically. So perks are no longer the nice to have, they've become the need to have. And the reason for that is because employees' expectations now are high. If you think about it, in terms of retention, the annual cost of employee turnover in the last year's reported numbers was $160 billion. And that's because there's a ton of unfilled jobs in the U.S. So LinkedIn recently came out with a report, and it said in the top 10 U.S. cities, there's 6.2 million unfilled jobs in those top 10 U.S. cities. And the unemployment rate is very low at 4%. And so what that means is that today we're in an employees market. And so they've gone from a nice to have to a need to have. And then also perks have gone from things that were fluffy to now much more meaningful ways to support or much more meaningful perks. So things like flexibility in the office, wellness, student loan forgiveness, child care or elder care. And so they've become, because of that, a critical talent strategy. And so when they once were something that was inexpensive, they've now become an increasingly expensive strategy for companies. We like to refer to it at our company as like the company version of keeping up with the Joneses. In order to attract and retain that top talent, we need to be offering things that resonate with them. So clearly, perks have become a key strategy for companies to retain talent. Over time, helps us to attract, engage, and retain. And so the goal of perks, yes, has become attracting the best candidates, ensuring diversity of candidates, retention, and then also supporting our employees in their whole lives. But here's the rub. As perks have become more important in the workplace, we've also noticed that the problems have started to arise with them as well. And so as we're offering more and more perks to our in-office employees, we're noticing that they're also not meeting the needs or the demands of remote employees. Or if you have a local HQ that you go to, but your company also has satellite offices, the people in the satellite offices might not be able to get the same perks or offerings from the people who are in the local HQ. The perks are also, as we offer them, it's more difficult than ever before to accommodate the 5 generations at work. And so all the way from the traditionalists down to the Gen Z, everyone's at different life stages, everyone has different needs, preferences, dietary restrictions, and so it can be difficult to make sure our perk programs solve for everyone. That also results in them not being personalized. Because companies are offering more and more perks in their for their employees, there also means that the HR team members have more perks to manage. So let us know in that chat window if this is you. Have you or a team member have to pick, pilot, purchase, manage, and maintain the individual perks that your company offers, as well as the perk vendor relationship. It can be a really costly process. And then also because there's no software for this process, people are using spreadsheets and email, which makes it really difficult to know who's using what and when, or what's being used and by who. And then lastly here, the perks, oftentimes they end up becoming more reactionary. People are asking for them, and so the company offers them, and so they're not necessarily always aligned with the proactive approach that companies want to take, which would be aligning with company values. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how perks have changed, what their goals are, and what they're missing the mark for, and so it's easy to see that while they're a critical retention strategy for companies, they're also at a really important or significant inflection point. So what is a company to do if they wish to succeed in the future? We know that we need to offer more employee perks to solve for the needs of our employees, but some more problems are arising as well. And so companies today need to evolve. You folks are ahead of the curve by being in here because you're already seeking out information, you're seeing what it takes to be ahead of the curve. So kudos to you folks for being in here. But that's what we're going to dive into in our next section. Those strategies that you can use to attract, engage, and most of all, retain employees. And then as a bonus, some of these strategies are also going to help you to solve the problems that have crept up over time that we were just talking about. So we're going to help you to attract, engage, and retain, and also solve some of those problems. Let's talk about those 3 strategies now. The 3 strategies are going to be thinking about your perks program as a whole instead of just individual perks. Secondly, we'll talk about introducing flexibility-focused perks. And then lastly, we'll introduce the strategy on how you can better personalize your employee perks. So let's start with this first one. Most of the time, when we think about employee perks, we think about them like this: a big, long list of the different offerings that we can pull together to solve for our team. Now, it's great to have a long list like this, but it's not necessarily the most strategic way to be thinking about our employee perks. And it's not really our fault, because if you think about it, websites like Glassdoor, the information that they share with the world is also in a list format. So they bucketed it a bit here on their benefits page with the two types of benefits, but it's still long lists. And then also, Built in Boston, they do a great job actually of starting to break down the perks and which categories they fit in. However, both of these could be improved upon a little bit, which is why we want to introduce a framework today, which is called the 4 C's and 1 P perk framework. Now, the benefit of using a framework like this is it helps us to emphasize the purpose of our perks. Long lists of perks can help us to get lost in what we're offering. It's not a strategic way to think about them. And so this one will emphasize the purpose of your perks. It will also help you to provide a more holistic view of what you're offering. Instead of thinking about them one-off, you can think about them as a whole unit, a perk program, instead of individual perks. This framework will also help us to identify the gaps. Sometimes the gaps in our perk programs can be purposeful. Sometimes they're not. And so it's important to know if we have a gap, are we proactively making that decision, or are we just simply having a gap and not realizing it? Using this framework will also help you to better communicate the benefits and the perks that you offer to your employees. So today, if your employees come up to you, or you create a wiki page and some sort of communication plan, how do you communicate those benefits to your team members? This can be a great way to reinforce what these perks are for. And then lastly, it helps us to move the conversations forward. When we all understand what the purpose of the perks are, we can start to have more meaningful feedback conversations. Okay, great. So we're going to go through each one of these now, starting with the first one, which is convenience. So a lot of the ways that companies today think, or a lot of the perk offerings showed up even on that first list that I provided, are convenience-based perks. And so convenience-based perks, the goal of those are generally to help employees' lives become easier. Examples of this are things like food, snacks, drinks in the office, and other on-site amenities like dry cleaning, optometry, those eye exams, and then also manicures. And so as we go through each one of these, remember that each one is labeled out by its purpose. And then also, at the end here, we'll talk about doing some sort of audit. So does your company offer career-based perks? The career-based perks, the goal of those is to help employees' skills and careers grow. Examples of this are books, courses, career coaching, tuition reimbursement. The next one is community. So the goal of community-based perks are to help employees connect and have a greater sense of belonging. Adam Grant, author of Givers and Takers, also option B, and professor at University of Pennsylvania, also works with Facebook and does a lot of research through the Facebook team, found that through research, employees care about 3 things, and community was a big one of them. And so our perks can help us to build more community. Examples of this are game nights, company-sponsored teams like softball or soccer, or even clubs like hiking clubs. All right, the next one is contribution. This was another one that Adam Grant's research pulled up as an important part of what employees look for in their employer. And so the goal of a contribution-based perk is to help employees give back to others. This could be through charity events, volunteer days, or company matching on charitable donations. And then the last one is the personal. The goal of these personal perks is to help employees' lives become better. This is anything that will help them in their personal lives and often outside of the office. So things like gym contracts, student loan repayments, travel stipends, pet insurance, daycare subsidies, elder care support. So we've talked about the 4 C's and the 1 P, and these are the different types of perks your company can offer. Next, what we recommend doing with this framework is to think about each of the perks that you offer. So if you offer, let's say, in office, if you have an on-site gym, one last thing I want to point out, this question came through, and what about categories? What about the items that fit into more than one category? Excellent call, excellent point there. Some of them may fit into more than one, and that can be a great perk for your team. So think about something like Toastmasters. Toastmasters is something that's great for your career, but it's also great for the community. Toastmasters is a great example. Some other ones might be hike spots, so that one might be, or hiking. Having a hiking club might be great for the personal weekend hikes that people want to do, but then also it helps to develop a sense of community as well. So, great question. If they can fit into more than one, that's excellent. So using the 4 C's and 1 P framework, break out each one of the perks that you offer and start to shade in, excuse me, the perks that you offer, and if you have one convenience-based one, or you find out that you have 5, shade in 50% or 60% if you have 6 of this pie here. So over time, based on the amount of perks that you offer in these categories, you can start to see how even or uneven your perk offerings are. So, in order to apply this, we talked about the 4 C's and 1 P perk framework to give you an idea of how you can be thinking about your perks in a more holistic and strategic way. At the end here in the additional resources, we'll give you the opportunity to download this framework, and then also use this framework to get an idea. Is there balance? Is there not balance? Is that purposeful balance? Maybe you purposely don't have any, let's say from this past example, personal based perks, and maybe that's on purpose, but this can help you to better communicate with your team and think about your strategy moving forward. Great. All right, let's move on to the next way that you can think about employee perks and how you can use them to retain employees. So that last one was all about thinking about your program holistically, doing an audit, and purposely creating your perks moving forward. This next one's going to be focused all around creating more flexibility for your employees. So just a couple of statistics to talk about the importance of flexibility today. Last year, Work did a big study, and they found out that 96% of U.S. professionals say that they need flexibility. However, only 47% feel like they have it. And so when we talk about workplace flexibility, what does that mean exactly? Well, workplace flexibility is a way to define how and when work gets done. And it matters quite a bit. In that same work research study, they found out that people who had access to flexibility were twice as likely to report, without access to workplace flexibility. People without it were 2 times as likely to report being dissatisfied at work. And half of those employees said that they would leave their company if offered a more flexible alternative. So people are actively looking for a work environment that supports them and their needs. Advocacy. So employees with access to flexibility have a net promoter score on average of 48 points higher than those without the access. And then lastly, engagement and diversity. So the employees that had flexibility, they were 22% more likely to feel like their ideas are valued, and 21% more likely to believe that their work environment fosters diverse points of view. So if you think about the iceberg analogy, where everything that's above the waterline, when you look at an iceberg, oftentimes we think of retention as the metric, as the one that's above the iceberg, but what's below the waterline are things like loyalty and advocacy and trust. And a lot of those metrics matter tremendously towards improving employee retention. So how can a company offer more flexibility to their employees? I'm going to go through a few ideas here, 5, starting first with remote work. If your company's not offering remote work today, your company might already feel like it's behind the times. More and more companies are starting to offer not just remote work, hiring people in different cities, different states, different countries, but they're also starting to allow more partially remote work. So maybe if your organization isn't gung-ho or just super excited about remote work in general, think about considering offering employees partially remote work. So just because people live close to the office or in the same state or the same city doesn't necessarily mean that they want to fight traffic every day to come into the office. So even with our team, we all work closely to our comp office, but we get to work remote Mondays and Fridays. And that's something that is optional and is encouraged for people, so that way they can better beat the traffic or pick kids up from daycare, whatever it might be for them. So partially remote work. Another option is to consider a concept called time shifting. So this allows employees to shift their hours either earlier in the day or later in the day to accommodate them and their most productive self. So I don't know how many people on today's webinar consider themselves to be morning people. Let us know using that chat window, or maybe you're an evening person. If that's you, yeah, let us know in the chat window. So time shifting is, instead of having a 9 to 5 set of hours, you can instead shift them to something like 7 to 3. That way you beat the work traffic. Also, it might be better for people's daycare, or maybe they're taking care of their parents, or maybe they just feel like they are those morning people. This can be a great way to keep people at their most productive selves without compromising any time that they're working. Another option for flexibility is creating a program around micro-agility. So micro-agility is basically empowering your employees to change their work hours slightly when necessary to make up those hours later. So if you've ever had a colleague that needs to run out because they have a sick child at school, or maybe there's a school play, or maybe they have a doctor's appointment, or maybe they're preparing to run, a half marathon, and they need to take a few hours in the morning to run. This allows people to have that freedom and that autonomy to change their hours slightly and make them up later, without having to take, and this is the important part, without having to take their hard-earned vacation time or hard-earned sick time. And then the last concept here around flexibility is just part-time work. This isn't a new idea, but it's one that's certainly worth revisiting today, as millennials are a huge part of the workforce now. I think it was 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 employees are now 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 of our employees are now millennials, and a lot of them are starting to have children as well. And so part-time work is allowing people to temporarily go part-time, or even permanently allow them to go part-time to better accommodate a new life situation. So whatever it might be, allowing them to have the option to go part-time. All right, so applying these 5, these can be pretty big changes to an organization, and so our recommendation is to just identify one area where you can improve your workplace flexibility. Is it something like allowing people to choose to work remote 1 day a week, or letting everyone work remote 1 day that you pick per week? Allowing people to do that, and then also connecting with employees, managers, influencers, and decision makers to roll this out. So a lot of times we as HR, we are also kind of project managers in a way, and we have to talk to the different stakeholders and really understand what's important to them and get buy-in and influence as well. And so if you're rolling out something like this, it's really important to connect with those stakeholders from different parts of the organization first. All right, great. So that is introducing flexibility-focused perks. The next one is personalizing them. Great. So what are personalized perks? When we talk about personalization, we're talking about 100% customization to the unique needs, preferences, life stages, dietary restrictions, locations of your employees, truly making them personalized. And so I show this graphic here. This is actually from last year, our team taking apples. And I show this graphic because our team, or this image of our team, because based on the 4 of us in this photo, we have 3 different generations, we have 3 different life stages, actually 4 different life stages. We have 3 different dietary restrictions. And this is just for a team of, and different religious preferences or religions as well. And we also, so that's just 4 people. And so when you ask your employees what their real preferences are, you're able to see that they might not align with some of the things that we're already offering today. And so it's really good to be able to, just from the 4 of us, there's so much diversity already. But taking the time to ask your employees what they truly like to eat, maybe it is they're not gluten-free, but they like to eat gluten-free, that's the difference. So personalization is really important. MetLife did a survey, and 73% of employees said that having benefits which were customized to their needs would increase their loyalty to their employer. So once again, that's like that metric that's below the waterline for the iceberg. Loyalty is incredibly important, and that's what leads to better retention. And then also 77%, okay, so Deloitte came out last year with this global trends report, and out of all of the top 10 trends, 77% of people agreed that new rewards being flexible, agile, and personalized, being one of the top 10 trends. 77% of people agreed. However, only 37% of people surveyed felt that they were very ready or ready to meet the expectations. So that's a really big gap. But basically what this is saying is like everybody's talking about it, but no one's really doing it. I show this image of Cappadocia, Turkey, because this is something that I've always wanted to do. Come and see the go and see the hot air balloons, something that I've been dying to since it's been on my bucket list forever. Maybe focus today on the webinar can hold me accountable to this, but always talking about it but never doing it. So I actually want to pause here and just hear from you folks. Does anybody feel like they've already started their journey or already are personalizing their employee perks? You can let us know in that chat window. I'd love to hear. And I take this moment to ask folks to type in, are you doing this? If so, how are you doing this? First of all, I would love to learn from you. And then also, I mention this because it turns out in that same report that Deloitte did, only 8% of companies said that their rewards program is very effective at creating that personalization. So there's a huge opportunity here for folks who want to do this and can't do it, but there's a huge opportunity for folks to do this to better solve for their employees. Okay. So we're going to talk about how we can start to personalize our employee perks. It doesn't have to be difficult, but if you're just a little bit innovative, and you're truly, you're able to truly get competitive advantage if you're able to take on some innovation. Okay, so what's the secret? How are companies personalizing their employee perks today? And they're using a concept called lifestyle spending accounts. This is also similar to employee perk stipends. So what exactly is a lifestyle spending account? The definition of a lifestyle spending account is basically an employer-created and contributed account for employees. And what it does is it puts the perk money in the hands of employees so that they can buy the perks that they want and need most. I want to show a quick example. So on the example here, you can see at the top it says Sam's monthly stipend $100. So Sam's company has created a lifestyle spending account for Sam and has allocated $100 per month for her and other employees to spend in the following categories: learning, health and wellness, and food. So you can see this month, Sam's already purchased $15 to buy a book, spent $50 on her gym membership, and then also $15 on going out to lunch with the team, with a total of $20 of their perk funds remaining. And so my question for you folks is, if your company gave you $100, or if you were to create your own company's perk program or a lifestyle spending account, what would you spend your $100 a month on? Great. Now, the thing with lifestyle spending accounts is that, you know how at the beginning I talked about some of the problems that were surfacing with perks today as well? They're becoming more and more important to companies, especially for attracting and retention. But there's more problems that are popping up. Well, lifestyle spending accounts are a big innovation on the purchasing process of perks as well as the delivery model of perks. So if we think about the traditional way that we've all purchased perks in the past, it's been like HR, the company has a budget, and they go out and pick the perks for the company. But what ends up happening is that perks result in being one size fits all. And so if you think about it, a company team member, an HR team member might do an ENPS to find out, the pulse of the company, and ideas and topics and requests around perks might come in. But then also, an HR team member might also distribute a specific survey around perks that the company wants. And based off of the feedback, trends will emerge. And so the company then has the option to buy perks based off of the feedback. And usually it could come back, for example, something like continuous education is a big request. Somebody else might come back and say that they want student loan forgiveness, and somebody else might come back and say that they'd like money towards child care. And what happens is this puts the HR team members and the company in a really difficult position. They then have to pick the perfect perk for everyone when they've already identified that everybody wants something different. And what ends up happening because of this is that unintentionally our perks become exclusive. We end up solving for some people instead of everyone. And then this also puts HR in a really tough predicament because they're the ones who are managing these individual perks. So they're picking, piloting, purchasing, as we talked about, and there's no way to track the success of them. So what is the ROI of our perk program? If you talk to a lot of other people today, it's really difficult to know, and most people don't have an idea of utilization rates or the ROI. And then lastly, because this does need to get mentioned, a lot of perks today, if you're purchasing it through the traditional model or delivering them through the traditional model, they're not IRS compliant. So a lot of people, the CFOs on the call today will agree that perks are often a taxable event, and it's important that we are accounting for them appropriately. So how the traditional way to offer perks compares with lifestyle spending accounts is that because employees are able to purchase their own perks with a lifestyle spending account, they become personalized. And so if you think about it, the personalization, Spotify, Amazon, Netflix, our social media feeds, everything today that we interact with can be personalized. And lifestyle spending accounts do this for perks. So the needs of a single employee living in the city are very different from a married couple with 3 children in the suburbs. Lifestyle spending accounts account for this. Perks also become inclusive when you offer your employees a lifestyle spending account. So when they're purchasing their own perks, they no longer feel excluded. So an example of this is if a company has a fully stocked coffee bar. I love drinking coffee, big fan, and so the fully stocked coffee bar would be great for me, but what about the tea drinkers who no longer, but what about people who prefer tea instead? And so when people are given their own money, they're able to purchase what matters most to them based on their, as we said before, life stages, preferences, dietary restrictions, needs, all of that. Lastly, they become easier to manage for HR. So we say that employees love lifestyle spending accounts, but HR loves them even more because there's no individual perks that have to be managed. Also, ROI metrics are able to be visible. And then lastly, if you're using a software, they can become IRS compliant. Great. So if you've never heard of these before, a couple of companies that are using them today, Airbnb. So Airbnb offers their employees $2,000 a year to spend on travel through travel perk stipend. And this is great for Airbnb because travel stipend, that is basically what their company's whole mission is around, is travel and helping people to have more experiences. And so by giving each employee $2,000 a year to spend on travel, they're allowing them to live the same experiences as their customers or their consumers. Qualtrics, this one got a lot of press on Business Insider and was shared far and wide when they announced this program. But Qualtrics, they give their employees every year $1,500 to spend on experiences. This can be to go to volunteer for disaster relief. It can be to go take family members to Disney. It can be whatever that person considers to be an experience. And so this is Qualtrics the way that they support their employees to a whole new level. Facebook gives new parents baby cash, so they give them a $4,000 stipend. Microsoft does an $800 Stay Fit reimbursement, so people can pick whatever their favorite way to stay physical, emotionally, or to stay healthy, whether that's physical, emotionally, or financially or mentally. Basecamp has a lot of different stipends. They're also a culture leader. And they have $100 per month for employees for health and wellness, $100 a month for massages, $1,000 a year for continuing education, and then $1,000 a year for charitable giving with matching. And then Buffer and Circle, they both have lifestyle spending accounts as well, or perk stipends for their team. And I want to just look at this Buffer example a little bit more. So this graphic, this pie chart, is straight from a blog post that a Buffer team member wrote about how they noticed their team was spending their $20 a month learning stipend. So I'm not sure how many team members Buffer has, but just by looking at this pie chart, you can see incredible amounts of diversity in how people used their learning stipend. So 23% used it on meetings or meetups for conferences, 23% used it on data camp, and then look at the breakdown from there. Some people use it on Lynda, another person used it on Creative Market, audio lessons, individual coaching, Udemy, TreeHub. And so it's not just different courses, it's not just the fact that people are getting courses, they're getting those courses from different websites as well. And so it's really difficult for us to expect, any HR person to be able to create a customized perk program to this degree. Okay. So lastly here, I just want to run through a few examples. If you're learning about lifestyle spending accounts for the first time, there's 3 different examples or ways that they can be implemented within a company. So first, you can turn over a perk stipend and send it through a lifestyle spending account. That's basically a software. So if your company, I show a photo here, we say that this is Sam. So Sam here has a big problem, which is spending time managing all the perk stipends. So if you offer perk stipends today, you still have to manage them, and you have to manage each individual employee's balance. You have to manage the taxes. You have to also manage all the different expenses, and then you can't see utilization rates as well. But the benefit of turning this into a lifestyle spending account is that you then have a software which manages all of this for you. So instead of having to spend time managing this, it's all automated, it's not through a software. Another example or use case for a company to turn to a lifestyle spending account is if you already have some community-based, maybe you're a smaller team that has some community-based perks, so things like game nights or happy hours, and you offer beer in the office, but you're on a limited budget, and you also notice that everybody on your team wants something different. So for companies that are smaller, that have limited budget with a wide variety or diversity, companies then can turn, instead of offering individual perks, can turn to lifestyle spending accounts so they can offer more with less money and also remove the administrative hassle. All right, and then lastly, we have Erin here at the bottom. So Erin works at a larger size company and already offers their employees tons of different perks, a lot of them being the on-site convenience-based perks. Usually at larger companies, the problem is now become to support the remote team members, managing all of the individual perks, and then also keeping the team happy with all the perks that you offer. The more you offer, the greater the expectations become. And so that's what Erin's problems or challenges usually are. So a lifestyle spending account helps Erin in that large organization by, instead of offering more perks, Erin can combine all of the different rarely used perks into one stipend for those who need it. So instead of offering a whole sweet breadth of things, removing the things that people aren't really using anymore, maybe Bagel Friday, which has started out, always starts out as a great idea, and everyone loves Bagel Fridays or donuts in the office, but then over time it ends up becoming one of those things where people don't eat them and they get thrown out, or people take them home for their families, which isn't bad, but it's just not serving that same purpose anymore. So this can help prevent that, and also bringing all of them together can allow offer more with less, same example as the last one, and then can save up to 80 hours a month of management, depending on how large the organization is. So those are the three different instances where lifestyle spending accounts can be most powerful. All right, applying it. For you, if you want to offer personalized perks, lifestyle spending accounts is a great option for that. So if you're interested, the best way to do this is to pick the amount that you want your employees to be able to spend, pick the categories of spending. So do you want to allow them to spend on travel? Do you want to allow them to spend on food? Do you want to allow them to spend on family? Do you want to allow them to spend on continuous education, health and wellness, or maybe all of the categories? And then also determine the time frame for spending. Do you want to do $100 a month? Do you want to do $250 a quarter, $5,000 a year, whatever is best for you and your company situation. And then lastly, so simply here, roll it out. I know it's not that simple, but taking steps towards rolling it out. All right, so we are getting close to the end of today's call. One last thing I want to just introduce, and this is one of my personal favorites, is combining personalized perks. Now that we know we have personalized perks, combining it with the Wheel of Life. Now, what I want to introduce here is something that's really innovative, and if you think about it, we talked earlier about companies need to evolve, and so if you think back to 2000, Zipcar was just an idea that Robin Chase and her co-founder came up with while dropping their kids off at the same kindergarten. In 2001, a tech giant, Microsoft, pushed the envelope to create their very first gaming console, which was the Xbox. And then also, once upon a time, there was no Google. And so, being innovative is how we're able to continue to be successful and, in this case, really retain our employees. And so I want to introduce a concept, the Wheel of Life combined with personalized perks. And if you're not familiar with the Wheel of Life, this is one of the most popular exercises that career coaches do with their clients. It is the most popular because it's so successful and it's so profound and it helps people of varying situations. So whether the person's stuck in life, whether the person feels like they don't have any balance, or the person just wants to kick their life into the next gear, the Wheel of Life helps them to do that. So when we combine something as powerful as the Wheel of Life, with perks, we think something really magical can happen. So the Wheel of Life, we'll just walk you through it real quick, is basically a big pie, which represents your life, and so it's broken up into 8 different segments. And each one of these 8 segments represents a specific important area of your life. So intimate relationships, career, health and wellness, personal growth, and so on. And so what a career coach usually does with their client is they ask them, based off of this pie and all the different names here, do all of these really resonate with you? And so someone who might have had spirituality in the beginning might have said, I actually really prefer to change that to contribution. And so they allow them to change this, changes to really resonate with them. Once they have all of these different 8 segments to be meaningful, they then ask them, based on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the least, 10 being the most, how satisfied are you currently with this area of your life? So for intimate relationships, it might be, in this example, an 8. And so if it's 8, they then shade in 80%. This looks probably a little bit familiar to the 4 C's and 1 P framework. For career, maybe it's a 5, they shade in 50%, and they go all the way around, shading in how satisfied they are currently with their life. And what results, in the end, is something that looks a little bit like this. So the power in this framework comes from being able to take something so abstract that we carry around in our minds and deliver some real metrics associated with it. And so this can give you a great understanding of just how happy or satisfied someone is with their life. Now, where we think, and actually the last step that a career coach does is with their client is they ask them, pick a category that you'd like to start with. And so maybe in this example, they take friends and family and say, how can we move your friends and family category? What's one thing we can do to move it from a 4 to a 5? What's one thing? And so one person might say, I'd like to have more time with my family, so I'd like to have someone come and clean my house on a weekly basis. Someone else might say, I live in a different city than the rest of my family, so I'd love to have money to be able to go visit my family. And so those are just two examples of how people might respond differently. What we think here at Comms is, imagine how powerful this could be if you combine this framework with employee perks. And so instead, that perk money, that lifestyle spending account, that personalized perk stipend that someone has, if they want to improve their friends and family pie chart, maybe it's giving them the money or allowing them to use that money to go fly out and see their friends and family. Or maybe it is allowing them to take that family stipend and invest it in a house cleaner so they can spend more time on the weekends with their family. This is how we're able to achieve true meaning and powerful relationships and innovation through employers and employees working together. Lastly here, you can apply this by downloading the Wheel of Life exercise, doing it yourself, lead by example, doing it with friends and families, significant others, or colleagues. I have a lot of friends that are doing this with their team now and seeing tons of benefits. I will say it does take a lot of trust, so if you and your team have trust, this would be a great exercise for you. And then also think about how you can apply this with personalized perks for your team. So as we recap here today, I want to share a few additional resources, one for each of the sections that we talked about here today. If you're interested in starting to do that audit of your current perks program, starting to think about them holistically, the 4 C's and 1 P perk framework, you can download it here, fill that out. We also have an article that's the top 7 perks of 2019. That one highlights all the different types of flexibility in the workplace. We also have an ebook that you can download with everything you need to know about lifestyle spending accounts. And then lastly, the Wheel of Life download is also available. All right. I hope this was helpful. If you folks have any questions, I'd love to take them now, but otherwise that's all for us today. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your super busy days to talk about employee retention and how you can use perks to improve your retention. But otherwise, I think we're ready to take some questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah. That was great and super interesting, and I think really valuable too. So a couple questions, actually 2 kind of related ones, so maybe I'll start there. The first question is about sourcing perks that employees want. Are any tips for that? I know you mentioned surveys. Are there other resources that you can go to? Do you try things out? What's the best approach there?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So for sourcing that, it's interesting because a lot of HR team members are now becoming like the go-to source inside the organization for like everything that an employee might want. So for example, it's like, I think of it maybe as like the modern day library catalog, which is like, if you want to find a book, like a nonfiction book that talks about, a historical nonfiction book that talks about a specific period, like it's now HR's job almost to have an idea of that and to have a list of like all these different vendors. So a great example I heard recently was like one HR professional knows every single meditation app there is and knows all the differences between them all so that they can offer the right one to their employees. So what's the best way to source? That's a really good question. There's some good resources if you look online on our website on Comps. We talk about it as like a perk stack, so finding what are all the different perks available. And then also, based off of like the different perks, what are some ideal perk vendors? If you're just getting started, that's a great place. But then also, for me personally, I love learning from others. So talk to other folks who are at your company who might already be using those and cultivate that type of community conversation, and then also learn from other HR team members what they're doing for their company.
Awesome. And so the second half of that question is kind of suggestions for checking in about how employees are, happy with the perks you're offering, or if there are more that they're looking for. Is that just kind of like a regular cadence? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, of course, now a lot of organizations talk about doing, and a lot of companies are doing the eNPS, which is like the employee version of an NPS, which stands for Net Promoter Score. So if your organization isn't doing something like that, I'd highly recommend launching a Net Promoter Score for employees to communicate with you on a regular basis. Net Promoter Scores are basically the 0 to 10 scale. How likely are you to recommend working at this company to others? So it's a great qualitative measure, and then there's also a quantitative question which says, what's the reason for the score that you gave? And that can help you get a lot of great insights that, people might not have shared otherwise. So creating a channel for communication is really important, and then ENPS is a great way to do that.
Awesome. We've got another question here, and I'll encourage everyone in the next few minutes, if you have any questions, definitely send them over. We got one or two more here, but definitely send some things over if you have anything pressing. So this one, it says, how much of what you do around perks is geared toward traditional companies that are maybe behind the curve versus modern companies that are a little bit more receptive to innovating in employee benefits?
How much of what we do? I'd love to make sure that I fully understand that question. So if you're still on the line and you have that question, please send it over. But I guess I can take a stab at that. I mean, so for comms in general, and a lot of like what we focus on learning about the market is focusing on understanding those shifts in the way that people are working. If you think back to the work that our parents, grandparents have done, a lot of it was more manual focused, and the work today has gone from manual to mental. It's gone from bricks to clicks. It's gone from 9 to 5 to always on. And so we try to find out where it is now and where it's going, and help companies successfully navigate that shift. We know that in order to remain successful in a super competitive world that we're in for talent, it's going to take it's going to take a lot of innovation. It's going to take for people to push the envelope. So we try to help people to do that. But we like helping people all kinds.
Gotcha. Awesome. One last question. This one's a little bit maybe more kind of conceptual, but is, the idea of balance between perks. So you mentioned some perks like time shifting or remote work, and obviously you could see that as a trade-off in terms of maybe the community or the in-office environment. So just kind of broadly, how do you think about the different trade-offs or balance between kind of perks and productivity?
I know, that's such an important question, because you can't do it all. And by picking one thing, you're then sometimes not picking another thing. And so that's why it's really important today for people to take a step back and think about their perk programs in a more holistic way. I think part of the first section here for the strategies was companies today, now need to start thinking, instead of one-off individual perks, what do you want to stand for? What do you want to support in your employees? Because you only have so much time, you only have so much money, you only have so much resources, and you only have so much communication time or ability. So you can't, you can't communicate everything that you want to in the moment. So how do you make sure that when you do have the time to communicate these benefits and these perks, that you're able to get your message across? Our attentions are limited time span now, or a limited attention span now. And so even that we need to make sure we're doing in a more strategic way.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that's it for now. We're just at the end of the hour. I want to thank Sarah, of course, for hosting, and everyone for attending. If you do have questions, feel free to leave them in now. We can, maybe recap over email. And just as a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be sent out. And there was a question too about the deck, and so I'm sure we can send that out as well if people are interested in receiving that. So we'll make sure that you guys get those resources. Awesome. I want to thank everyone else again, and look out for those materials coming soon.
Thanks
everybody.